Okay, so here we are live with another G.I. Joe Classified series unboxing, and this is Dial Tone. So you might notice the surroundings are a little different today. That's because I'm over at my mother's house. I was visiting my mom, and she's got some chores to do, and I hadn't done a video in a couple of days, so I brought this along with me so I could go ahead and open them up. Yes, we're finally back into G.I. Joe, and man, I gotta tell you, I got a ton of G.I. Joe stuff to open up. And in fact, I had so much of it, I was having a hard time deciding which one to open up first. But as I was going through the big box of G.I. Joe stuff that I have to open, I realized there was only one logical choice, and that's this guy, Dial Tone. I had to open him up. Why? Because he was supposed to come out a long, long, long time ago, and I hadn't had a chance to, open him up since I finally got him, which I got very long after the fact. Bobby Wald, in fact, points this out and says, for a long time, for as long as it took to get Dial Tone, his name should have been Busy Signal. Yeah, these are probably a lot of jokes that some of the younger people in the audience might not get, but used to in the old days when the phone was something that was attached to the house. Once you would take it off of the hook, that was what we called the little thing that the phone sat in, the cradle, whatever you want to call it. You'd hear a little noise coming out of it, and that was a dial tone. So anyway, I'm going to get the tape cut here on the back. Here's the artwork that we got on the back. Got an image of dial tone in action. Got crashed, probably a Cobra ship down here. Got Leatherneck walking around in the background. He was supposed to be in the same assortment with Dial Tone, but Dial Tone, like Bobby Wald pointed out, took a while to get to us. Took a while to get to me anyway. But yeah, in the original GI Joe line, they both were characters in the class of 1986. Dial Tone, I always thought was a fairly interesting character. From the time that I first read about him in, I think it was the second GI Joe yearbook, they had an article about the making of the cartoon series, and they were talking about some of the new Joes that were going to be coming in the second season. And Dial Tone was one of the ones they mentioned. And the thing that I thought was interesting about Dial Tone was he was supposed to be a character that was just had just barely made it onto the GI Joe team, and he was just barely holding on to his status as a GI Joe team member by a thread. He was he was one who the GI Joes are supposed to be like the best of the best of the best, and I'm guessing he was that by like a narrow margin. So compared to like your average soldier, he probably would have been pretty badass. But once he gets into the GI Joe team, he goes from being a big fish in a small pond to being a small fish in a big pond. You know what I mean? Like he might have been hot stuff next to like your average soldier, but when you're on a team with people like Snake Eyes, Stalker, Roadblock, Footloose, even. Well, then maybe you're a little bit less impressive, and maybe Hawk is getting kind of sick of your antics and whatnot. And I don't think we saw a whole lot of that on the cartoon. There was that one episode where Cobra messed with GI Joe's records and had what they saw as the losers of the team promoted to colonel, which for some reason included Shipwreck. I don't know why Shipwreck was considered one of the losers of the team. Probably just because the writers thought Shipwreck was a funny character, but he was actually supposed to be really competent. And it doesn't make any sense to promote him to colonel anyway, because that's not a naval rank. But we're getting off track. But yeah, Dial Tone got promoted to colonel in that episode because of the Cobra computer hackery. Oh yeah, and the third one was Lifeline, who has his own classified series coming out soon. Anyway, I don't see too much as far as Easter eggs in there. Other than that, we get a close up of Dial Tone's unit patch and a look at his backpack. And one of the things that I thought was coolest about Dial Tone as an action figure was he had some some really unique accessories. The most Bobby Wald says this. I'm doing this on my phone. The most dangerous thing is that episode. The most dangerous thing. That's the name of the episode. Yeah, that makes sense. So it's been a while since I watched it, but it was a pretty funny episode. So anyway, let's go ahead and open them up. Oh yeah, here's the artwork on the side here. Dial Tone using his parabolic mic to listen in on some stuff. Oh yeah, what I was saying was like the original Dial Tone. I thought one of the coolest things about that figure was his accessories. He's a very well designed figure just in general, but he had some very cool, unique accessories, and he was supposed to be kind of like the new communications officer. So we'll talk more about that in a second. Also, another figure that came out at the same time as the original Dial Tone was Mainframe, and I just recently got the classified figure of Mainframe, and he looks pretty cool. So he'll be one I'll be opening sometime within the next few weeks. Here's the backpack. So it's like not only was he a guy who was barely holding on to his GI Joe status by a thread, but he also like wasn't even the only tech guy to come out that week, and or that year. I'm sorry, and it wasn't even the best tech guy because Mainframe would probably be the best tech guy like of the whole team actually. So yeah, just barely hanging on. But that kind of like made Dial Tone a more interesting character to me in a lot of ways. But yeah, the original figure, yeah, here's his comes a little smartphone. We'll talk more about that in a second. The original figure came with this cool backpack that they have recreated here. They've updated it a little bit, put like some leather casing over it, and it's still got the funky flip down microphone. We'll talk more about that in a minute. It's got some cameras built into it, which is kind of a couple of different cameras. And this one's actually articulated, so you can move that one around. And then more this sort of this camera like that's underneath here. One thing that I don't see on him, and maybe it's on here somewhere underneath the plastic packaging, is I don't see one of the Joe Pro devices on here. In fact, I don't remember the last time I saw one of those. But if there's a character that it would have been appropriate to give a Joe Pro, it would have been this guy. He probably would have been the guy who invented it, even. So anyway, this guy comes with a couple of other accessories that the original Dial Tone did not. I already showed you the smartphone, but of course, smartphones didn't even exist back in the 1980s. But he has one. We're in the 21st century now, so we can have that. And he's got a knife, little knife, very nice. And let's see. Bobby Wall says Easter egg on that package is a callback to the Joe's night out at the nightclub open air. And he says, I like on a few episodes you would see Mainframe and Dial Tone play the video game that they made that's just like Asteroid. Yeah, that was pretty cool. So I always kind of felt like those two had good chemistry together, and I always like to kind of team them up. And maybe Mainframe was kind of like an older brother kind of character to Dial Tone, and they wound up becoming good friends. Now, of course, speaking of Dial Tone's siblings, they did later introduce a second character with the code name Dial Tone that was actually the twin sister of this version, and she actually had a backstory where this guy, the original Dial Tone, had gone missing, so she joined the GI Joe team so that she could try to find him. And I thought that was a pretty cool storyline. Me and my pal Rudy, if he's watching, we were talking about how we would do a GI Joe cartoon if we were doing it, and that was something that like I wanted to incorporate into it as like I figured that would be like a good storyline to give it like an emotional hook would be to have the second Dial Tone and her quest to find her brother. That would be a good sort of storyline to have in that first season. Sean Franklin is here and he says, hey, right back at you. Good to see you. So he actually has a little pouch on his belt, a little green pouch that matches. It's that Dial Tone green, and you can slide the cell phone right into it. and hopefully it won't get lost. And then over here on this other leg, he's got a good old-fashioned walkie-talkie, and then the knife sheath over here. So let's go ahead and get a look at him holding the knife, and then we'll go ahead and put it back in there. So there he is with the knife, in case he's got to cut through some stuff. Very cool. Put that back into the sheath. Ba-bow. And then I might as well have him holding the cell phone. Hey, maybe him and Mainframe were able to turn that Asteroids game into an app for the cell phone, and he can play that when he gets bored. How about that? Now there is a little bit of a camera on the cell phone. I don't know if I can get that to show up, but like, see the little dot down there in the corner? Yeah, that's the camera. But when I put it into the little case, the camera got covered up. And when I put it in going in the opposite direction, the camera still gets covered up. I kind of feel like they probably made this thing like the reverse of how it should have been, because it would have been nice to be able to have that camera visible when he's got the cell phone in his case. And then the last of the accessories that the original dial tone did not come with, and we already saw this on the package, is he's got this parabolic mic, so he can listen in on the bad guys. Oh yeah, and his beret should be removable, so that's technically another accessory. And there's what he looks like without his beret. He looks kind of familiar to me, but I can't quite place who he looks like. Almost kind of like a cross between Daniel Craig and Tim Roth. And he does have the little silver flash on the beret, just like the original figure had. So we can put that back on there. And you can see that he's got a little bit of an earpiece in this ear, and that loops behind his ear. And you can see it attaches with a little wire. It's not actually attached, but it's sculpted and painted to look as if there's an actual wire leading down to this throat mic. So he's all geared up as far as communications gear. And then not a separate piece, but he's got this belt that's got lots of pouches on it. It's built into the trunk piece. So that's all solid. That's not removable. And then he's got this web gear, which looks just like the web gear that came with the original figure. A little more detailed, got a little more paint application to it. You can see that some of these pouches are painted in like a dark brown, but that is removable. And then underneath that, he's got this dark green flak vest with some pouches and pockets on it. And I always thought of this on the original figure as being kind of like a sweater vest, because like, he was supposed to be kind of like a techie, nerdy kind of character. So I always thought of him as wearing a sweater vest just to, kind of emphasize that sort of look. But in this one, it's just kind of a flak vest, so it's pretty cool. A long time ago, I'd made a 3 3/4 inch dial tone figure using Marauder Task Force parts, and it wound up being one of my favorite Marauder Task Force figures that I ever made. I even went so far as to get like a broken backpack from the original dial tone and adapted it to fit onto a Marauder figure. It's still probably one of the best Marauder action figures that I ever made. It turned out really cool. And I always really liked dial tone, so and they never really did like a proper 20th anniversary figure of them. I want to say that the ones they did was like, it was some kind of exclusive, like maybe like even a convention exclusive that was like really difficult to get a hold of. And even then, I thought they didn't do that great a job with it. So I definitely wanted to do my own version, and I was pretty happy with how it turned out. So of the accessories that the original one did came with, he had this very unique design for a backpack. And I like to think that this is something that Dial Tone built himself. And you can see a little teeny tiny exhaust fan up there. And like I said, it had like a bigger, what looked like an exhaust fan in the back of the original one, but this one's got this sort of leather casing to it. That's a new sort of twist that they put onto it. And it looks like this panel opens up. Yep, sure enough. And we got a little keyboard in there. so he can do a little hacking if he needs to. And you can see inside there actually is some open space, so you could probably store some extra gadgets and stuff in there if you wanted to. I wonder if the microphone would fit in there for storage. Nope, too big. Not going to fit in there. So it's just barely too big. So he's just going to have to hold it. I don't think there is any place on the figure where he can hold the microphone or the rifle. I don't see like a little peg. Sometimes they'll have like a little peg on the backpack these days, so you can put that through the trigger guard and have them hold it that way. But not in this case. So yeah, the original one came with this backpack. The two accessories that he came with was the backpack and the little submachine gun, which I always thought was like one of the cooler guns in the GI Joe line. I don't think it was based on any real world gun, but this is like a more realistic version of it. So they probably found a gun that looked like the original submachine gun somewhat and said, well, we'll just make it look like that. And I think this looks close enough to the original dial tone gun that I'm probably going to be happy with it. But I do have a 3D printer model of the original dial tone weapon, so I can, if I want to, and I might do this anyway, 3D print myself a dial tone submachine gun that looks just like the original, so I can have that as a display option for this guy. And you notice there's this little clip at the top. It almost looks like an oversized sight, but that's not what it is. I will show you what it is. It's a clip that can actually hold his phone in here, so he can be chatting with his girl while he's gunning down cobras. I'm sure there's more tactical reasons that he could have that as a. He doesn't necessarily have to be chatting with his girl, but it is the sort of thing where I kind of feel like that's something that's a mod I could see Dial Tone making, where like he could have like a little clip on his gun to hold his phone. It's probably something that even exists in real life, So Dial Tone said, Bobby Wald says, I had that figure for maybe a month before I realized the backpack opened. Yeah, I hadn't seen anybody talking about that recently, but when I took it out of the pack, like to me, it looked like there was a little bit of a seam there. So I was kind of like, I wonder if that, oh yeah, sure enough, that's supposed to open up. But it's a really cool backpack. I think it's a good update on the original Dial Tone backpack. I especially like the addition of the little cameras there at the side. I do kind of feel like they maybe made this microphone just like a little bit short, because you can see how it's kind of bumping into his chin a little bit there. So I think they probably kind of made the microphone just like maybe like just a little bit longer, maybe like a 1/16 of an inch would have been enough to give it the right amount of clearance. So if we want to see them all geared up, we can put the parabolic mic into the other hand, and there we go. That's him ready for action. So let's go ahead and talk about the articulation some. So I'll take the weapons out of his hands for now. We'll take off the backpack. Excuse me. Then we can just talk about the figure itself for a little bit. So Dial Tone can look up about that far, look down about that far, tilt his head kind of quizzically from side to side, rotate the head all the way around. And since this is a G.I. Joe classified figure, he not only has articulation where the head meets the neck, but also where the neck meets the collarbone. So some little bit extra articulation there. Of course, his arms rotate all the way around the shoulders. And he's got that little bit of a butterfly joint with the arms move back about that far and forward about that far. Dial Tone's arms raised to the sides about that far, so pretty decent range of motion there. And of course, the arms rotate all the way around the bicep swivel. He does have like a little extra strap here with some extra doodads in there. One of the things, I liked about that original Dial Tone figure, which was one of my favorite of the original G.I. Joe line, if we're being honest, was he had a lot of technical doodads kind of strapped around the figure. And this one has some of that. Like you can see, he's got this wristband with some gadgets attached to it. And he's got a watch over here with like a little calculator into it, because that was super high tech in the 80s. And damned if I didn't put his I put his web gear back on wrong. It's kind of upside down. So I'll probably get all kinds of comments afterwards saying, "His web gear's upside down. He turned his web gear right." But yeah, well, I already figured it out, so too late. He got double jointed elbows. He's got double jointed elbows. That's about the range of motion you get at the elbows, and of course the wrists rotate all the way around. And the right wrist has a vertical hinge to it, so it moves up and down a little bit. But mine's kind of sticky right now. Probably needs to get broken in some, and it might also be kind of bumping into this this wristband a little bit. So and then the left hand has a horizontal hinge on it, so it moves back and forth like that. And then Dial Tone does have an ab crunch, but it's underneath this vest, so you got to kind of account for the vest somewhat. He can bend forward about that far and bend back about that far. Still a pretty good range of motion. I knocked his beret off. We'll leave it off for now because he doesn't really need to have it on while I talk about the articulation. And then, of course, rotates all the way around at the waist. And the waist is set up kind of like an old 1980s G.I. Joe, but it's not an O-ring. It's a ball and socket in there. But you can still get some of that movement out of there that you could get out of a 1980s G.I. Joe. So that's nice. And he does have the cool drop down hips. So that can help him to sit down a little bit more and to kick up a little bit further when he's got to kick a Cobra Viper right in his mirrored face. The original Dial Tone, of course, was introduced in the same wave as the original Cobra Viper. So yeah, there's that. And then he's got a thigh cut, so the thigh rotates all the way around. He's got double jointed knees. That's about the range of motion you get at the knees. And then he's got a boot cut. Boot rotates all the way around. He's got those green boots like the original Dial Tone had. This is a somewhat darker green, I think, than the original figure. But I think it's a good color. It's a good color for like an updated version of Dial Tone, I think. And of course, he's got green knee pads to match. And then Dial Tone's foot can point down about that far, can point up about that far, and then his foot rotates all the way around where the foot meets the ankle. So this guy has been a long time coming, and I was almost worried that he might have been canceled and I might never get my classified Dial Tone figure. But thankfully, he did eventually show up. And Big Bad Toy Store did not let me down. So I'm going to go ahead and put the figure all back together again with the backpack and the microphone. And if you don't like the microphone actually being a microphone, you can still just have it turned up like this and pretend like it's an antenna or something like that. And honestly, that might make more sense with this guy because he's already got the throat mic on there. So he doesn't really need like a microphone physically to talk into. Put that beret back on him. There we go. And then the parabolic mic into his hand. And again, our boy is ready for action. Now, as I said, I've always been a fan of this guy. So years ago, I actually made a custom of Dial Tone. I bought an extra flint and basically repainted that. I took the shotgun shells off and I replaced them with some pouches, and then basically just repainted flint. So, oh, and I took the gauntlets off some extra Roadblock figures and cut them to fit the wrists of this guy. And that was my Dial Tone figure. And then I made the female version of Dial Tone. So I'll try to, when I get back to my house, see if I can find her and take some pictures of them together. But I might wind up trying to buy an extra one of him so I can give her the same submachine gun and backpack. This was not based on her appearance in any of the actual media. This was based on a piece of fan art that I'd seen where like they took the female Dial Tone and literally put her into the same outfit that her brother was in. And I thought that was really cool. And I thought that would make a cool figure. And I was right. It did make a cool figure, not to brag too much. That one was mostly repainted from the Snake Eyes origin movie Scarlet, and I thought that worked out pretty well. But I also like 3D printed a head for her that was, I think it was intended to be Jill Valentine, but it had the kind of short bob that I wanted the character to have, and she had a beret, so I'm like, hey, that works. But I'll try to see if I can find her when I get home, and I'll take a picture of the two of them together. But yeah, Dial Tone turned out really cool, and he was definitely worth the wait. I thought they did a really good job with this figure. One thing that I would have done differently, though, is the original backpack was not silver, and of course, like I said, it didn't have this kind of leather casing over it. But it wasn't silver. It was that sort of like really light gray, kind of off-white color that a lot of stuff was colored like back in the day, like the Nintendo Entertainment System was colored like that. So what I would have done instead of painting it silver is I would have painted it. I would have made it more of like a sort of color like that, but it kind of yellowed over time, like it was actually an old piece of 1980s technology. That's how I would have done it. But I want to point out before I go, I want to point out some of the other detail that I kind of glossed over on this. It's got like a little backpack frame on there, which is cool because I figure this thing's probably heavy. And got some wiring in there, and I already pointed out the cooling fan and some other doodads that are attached to it. Like I said, that they made this camera like articulated. They didn't have to do that. They could have just molded it in place facing backwards like that. But I thought it was kind of odd that it was facing forwards, and I'm like, is it articulated? Yeah, it's articulated. It rolls around. Got little pouches on the side. This is such a cool little backpack. And like I said, one of the things that I thought was coolest about that original Dial Tone was he had that cool backpack, and it wasn't like a particularly realistic sort of thing. I've never seen a backpack designed like that on any kind of real soldier at any point in history. But it was just cool and unique, and in my mind, it was something like I said, Dial Tone built it himself, and so of course nobody else had it. He was the only one because he was the one that built it, and likewise, this is probably something that Dial Tone just built himself. He probably just put it all together. So in my mind, with the Dial Tone twins, they're both tech geniuses, obviously, but the brother Jack, his genius leans more towards like hardware, like building gear and stuff like that, whereas Jill, her genius more leads towards software and building like programming and things like that. Now he's really good at programming and she's really good at building stuff, but he's just like a little bit better at building stuff than her, and she's just a little bit better at programming than him, so it kind of evens out. But they're both really good at each one. Remember, in the original Dial Tone file card, it mentions that like when he was a kid, he was all into building like crystal radio sets and things like that. So it was always kind of like an important part of his character that he's good at building devices and things like that. So anyway, I'm glad to finally have Dial Tone as part of my GI Joe collection. Not just the custom that I made, but an actual officially released figure. And we're going to have a lot more GI Joe figures to come in the coming weeks. And I'm going to have more Ninja Turtle stuff. I got plenty more Ninja Turtle stuff. I'm still getting more Ninja Turtle stuff in. So kind of making up for lost time with some of these things. Like I said, I was kind of concentrating on building up some of the NECA figures, but then I bought that Super 7 Shredder figure, and that was a line that had just been completely off of my radar. And I did really like that Shredder figure, so I decided to buy a few more of the Super 7 figures. And at this point, what I'm thinking with Super 7, with the Ultimate Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, is I want to get the whole first wave. Not the first wave, but the vintage line. I want to recreate the first wave of the vintage line with those Super 7 figures. So that means all four turtles, Splinter, April, Bebop, Rocksteady, and the Foot Soldier. That's going to be that first wave. And then I also want to get Casey Jones, because how can I not have Casey Jones in a Ninja Turtle line? and then every figure after that I figure is kind of going to be gravy, like maybe Baxter Stockman, or somebody like that. I might like to have, like, I don't think they did a figure of Fugitoid in that line, but if they did Fugitoid, I'd probably get Fugitoid. But yeah, NECA figures I'm gonna get caught up with. So I've got, I showed you the Casey Jones already, the NECA Casey Jones, the Mirage NECA Casey Jones. Of course, I already have a movie version, but I'm probably gonna get the other movie versions as well, because that one I thought was kind of lacking in accessories. And they've got the couple of movie Casey Jones figures they've done since then that kind of catch up with that a little bit, I think. So so yeah, lots more Ninja Turtles on the way. I got some more He-Man stuff on the way, and like I said, ton of GI Joe. We're going to be concentrating on GI Joe for the next couple of weeks, I think. Uh, I figure what I'll probably do is open up some more GI Joe figures for the rest of this week, and then maybe next week I'll go back on the Ninja Turtles for a little bit, and then go back to GI Joe, and that way we can change things up a little bit and not have a sort of thing where I just spend like a month and a half talking about the same type of action figure for a while. So anyway, that's it for this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure that you like and subscribe. Oh, I'm over here now. Like and subscribe. I'm back on my phone. Like and subscribe and all the other fun YouTube stuff down below. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think about Dial Tone, both the this figure itself, the character in general. Hell, tell me what you think about the original Dial Tone figure, because like I said, that was one of my favorite of the original GI Joe line when I was a kid. I thought that was a really impressive figure. Tell me what you think about the character, and if you enjoyed his what I perceive as being a unique characterization among the GI Joe team. But that's it for this guy. Hope you enjoyed it. We will talk to you next time. Bye.